Opinion: Trump didn't get Iran entirely wrong, but he misjudged its limits. The recent critique published by the Lowy Institute, titled "How Trump Got Iran Wrong," offers a sharp assessment of Donald Trump's approach to Iran during the latest crisis. It argues that his strategy of coercion, inconsistency, and overconfidence failed to produce meaningful results. There is truth in that claim, but it is only half the story. A more careful reading of events suggests something more nuanced. Trump did not fundamentally misunderstand Iran. Rather, he misjudged how far pressure alone could go. At the heart of the criticism is the idea that Trump overestimated the effectiveness of maximum pressure. Sanctions, military threats, and limited strikes were expected to push Iran into submission or at least force sweeping concessions. That didn't happen. Iran absorbed the pressure, refused to capitulate, and maintained its strategic posture. From that perspective, the critique holds: coercion did not deliver decisive victory. But framing this as a complete strategic failure oversimplifies the reality of modern geopolitics. States like Iran do not simply collapse under pressure, especially not regimes that have endured decades of isolation, sanctions, and conflict. Expecting outright capitulation was unrealistic from the outset. What Trump's approach did achieve, however, is often overlooked. Iran did not ignore the pressure. It engaged with it. Negotiations, back-channel talks, and conditional proposals emerged repeatedly throughout the crisis. These were not signs of surrender, but they were signs of constraint. Pressure did not break Iran, but it shaped its behavior. This is where the critique from the Lowy Institute falls short. It assumes that success in foreign policy must look like total compliance. In reality, success is often incremental, shifting leverage, forcing engagement, and redefining the terms of negotiation. By that standard, Trump's strategy had measurable, if limited, impact. Another common criticism is Trump's inconsistency. His administration oscillated between threats and diplomacy, sometimes within days. Critics interpret this as strategic confusion. But there is an alternative interpretation: unpredictability as a tactic. By refusing to follow a linear diplomatic script, Trump may have aimed to keep Iran off balance, complicating its ability to anticipate U.S. moves. That approach carries risks, of course, can erode trust and unsettle allies, but it is not inherently irrational. In fact, elements of this strategic ambiguity echo long-standing theories of deterrence and coercive bargaining. Still, acknowledging these points does not mean declaring the strategy a success. Trump clearly miscalculated Iran's breaking point. The expectation that economic and military pressure would trigger either internal collapse or sweeping concessions proved misguided. Instead, the pressure hardened resistance, empowered more hardline elements within Iran, and prolonged the confrontation. Moreover, the lack of a coherent long-term political roadmap weakened the effectiveness of the pressure campaign. Coercion without a clear and achievable endgame risks becoming an end in itself, and that is where the strategy faltered most. Critics also point to alternatives, particularly diplomacy-first approaches like the nuclear agreement abandoned earlier in Trump's tenure. But those alternatives had their own limitations. They constrained parts of Iran's nuclear program while leaving other concerns, missile development, regional influence, largely untouched. The status quo that Trump sought to disrupt was not without flaws. So the real question is not whether Trump was right or wrong in absolute terms. It is whether his approach improved the strategic position of the United States compared to the available alternatives. The answer is mixed. He was right to recognize that pressure can alter the dynamics of negotiation. He was wrong to assume it could, on its own, deliver decisive outcomes. In the end, the lesson is less about one leader's misjudgment and more about the limits of power itself. Iran proved neither as weak as some hoped nor as immune to pressure as others claim. It responded, but on its own terms. Trump didn't entirely get Iran wrong, but he underestimated the narrow space between pressure that influences and pressure that backfires, and in that miscalculation lies the real story.